Welcome back to Press Pass. The focus, of course, is on how the media handles the security and whether we are keeping the government accountable when it comes to this matter. And we went around and asked from different counties just a sample. And this is people's perspective on whether they feel we have been strong or hard enough or we have been a bit laid back in our responsibility.
The media has been compromised so much so that whatever you heard is being received so much. Yeah? The details that you don't expose so much.
I think the media is doing more than enough to keep the Jubilee on its toes and also the opposition.
I don't think there should be any reason why maybe people should not be told the whole truth, what is happening in our country.
The media has been the front line in trying to make sure that at least they try to highlight any incident of insecurity.
I'm not satisfied with the way the media in Kenya handles the issue of security or to give a spot check on the government in terms of security.
Vyombo vya habari vinafanya kazi yake sawa sawa na serikali pia. Sasa kuna mambo ya security, tusilaumu serikali peke yake. Wananchi pia wafaa wachangie katika kupambana na uhalifu.
Awali ilikuwa ikifanya coverage ikiwa nzuri, na siku hizi kidogo tunaona hatujui ni nini imefanyika kwa sababu hawatoi ripoti vile ilikuwa inatoka kitambo.
Media tangu walipotishwa na serikali hawatoi news upande wa security. Sio kama baada wakati walikuwa Westgate walikuwa wanatoa maneno kwa investigation mzuri.
So some feel that we're doing our job. Many more feel that we are not doing our job as a media in this respect. Dennis, the first part, you mentioned national policy when it comes to security. Mr. Mashari Haido said, we are not the government. And even Manwa said, we are not to formulate it. So is it a wait and see game between us and the government? But we have national security analysts like yourself. Should we be consulting with you? Or how do we go about this?
I think the thing is this, you know, what my friend said is that you're not the government. Yes, it's true, you're not the government. But you have the role as a fourth estate to ensure that you exert genuine power to the national security organs and national security bosses, and also to make sure that you influence policies that will get the government to deliver proper security. What are some of
these policies?
You know, first of all, as you know, I was just basically going through what it is that we have as a country in terms of looking after national security, and I realized that we don't have a national security strategy. If you look at countries like the US that have gone under, you know, a lot of trouble, is that every year they come up with a national security strategy, and this is a document that outlines all the key threats that are against you know the country, and we don't have such documents. Yes, the Constitution has established in terms of the organs that are there in terms of looking at our external and internal security, but perhaps in terms of us saying how it is that we will tackle security year on year, month on month, is a document that we don't. And anybody you put in office, then they don't have a starting point or a working base of what it is are we looking at. So they end up, you know, trying to remedy reactions and knee-jerk situations that come up. I mean, if you look at you know, the 8 key areas that the state is supposed to look at in terms of security, and the 8 key areas that the media is supposed to tackle, and you know, I refer to them. If you look at economic and commercial crimes, if you look at transnational crimes, and this is where terrorism, you know, cyber crimes, drug trafficking, human trafficking, arms trafficking, which we don't even look at the aspect of arms trafficking, where all these guns that are killing our people, how are they ending up in Kenya? If you look at the issue of gender-based violence, rape, for example, is the #1 trending crime in Kenya. It's still an act and a violence against humanity, which is not even, it's not minor than terrorism. If you look at traffic offenses, we are in a mess. You know, if you look at organized crimes, and this is lawless devices and activities of the lawful, ethnic militias. There are people in Kenya who have to pay toll to be guarded by ethnic militias, you understand? I mean, if you look at resource conflicts, and this is where really the country is really ailing. This is the issue of cattle rustling, conflicts over land and pasture. We are ailing in this. If you look at ethnic violence, we still haven't healed from the aspect of ethnic violence. If you look at robbery and general security issues, we're still there. So if you look at these 8 key categories, how has the media influenced them, influenced the state to get the state to develop these policies, and how has the state handled this?
Rahab, he's mentioned some key sectors. Do we, or do you feel that in a way we have come to describe crime or national insecurity by focusing at or towards terror, especially given the last few days, or are we giving it a more thorough look?
I would like to say that I think sometimes it's very easy to lump crime together, as in what's actually happening together. But sometimes, like, there's certain issues. Like if we look at Kasarani, for example, the way people were being rounded up.
The holding centers. Yes,
the holding centers. Did media ask critical questions? Like, for example, when they went to Isili, were there actually women soldiers who were sent there just because, of course, they rounded up women and children? Was there a gender balance to make sure that women, for example, were not raped or nothing happened to them, and kids, because there were those issues we did ask these questions, because kids were left in homes and all of that stuff. But at what point do we ask these questions, and by asking these questions, does it stop whatever is happening from happening? Because we asked whether there are human rights violations, especially during that operation.
I think a lot of questions were asked. The thing is, what was the response?
Yes.
The thing is, when they're asked, then it forces the government or the authorities to know that they're being watched. Whether they'll do anything about it is another matter altogether. Yes. But I think one of the problems we face here is that often when those kind of operations are happening, some of us, I'm saying not all of us, some of us tend to take it that we should not ask questions. That this is a national security operation. We have a big problem with terrorism. Therefore, matters of human rights.
Speaking of which,
are secondary.
The fact that we feel sometimes that we should not ask questions. This is a segment that we call the eye opener, and a lot of the responses that we get from the security officials, especially just after the attacks, and whether or not we ask those questions, or we feel, as Macharia Gaido says, that we should probably let them do their thing. Let's have a listen.
The events of the past 3 weeks have brought fear, uncertainty, and sadly, hopelessness.
The Kenya Red Cross puts the death toll at 22. In Hindi, 12 bodies have been recovered from the bushes, where others are still lying following a raid by the suspected Al-Shabaab militia.
Residents of Hindi, Lamu County staged a protest calling on the government to ensure security is restored in their area.
The people who perpetrated this criminal activity in this police station must be brought to book, alive or dead.
This, therefore, was not an Al-Shabaab terrorist attack.
His statement, however, was preceded by Al-Shabaab's admission that it was behind the attacks. The president would also admit that security officials in Mpeketoni failed to act on intelligence.
With brutal regularity, critics have pointed out that Joseph Olelenku, a former manager at the Utalii Hotel, was never cut out for Kenya's toughest position, internal security.
The smoke you are seeing from the building is as a result of the terrorists setting some mattress on fire.
You need not to incite Kenyans. You need not to distribute or maybe issue statements that can amount to hate speech.
The eye-opener there, and some of the comments that, excuse me, some people feel were just mind-boggling. When you hear your Cabinet Secretary for Interior talk, especially after the attacks, do you feel, Rahab, I'd want you to respond to this, do you feel that this is a man in control? And is it really our job to say, this man is not in control, get him out?
I actually don't feel like he's in control. I think one of the issues is that he's kind of become, okay, on the internet, he's become a laughing stock, and nobody takes him seriously anymore. You know, it's like there are memes about Olelenku everywhere. It's like people are like, you know what, he'll talk and then we'll move on with issues. So nobody is actually taking him seriously, because he doesn't, to me and to you, things that seem obvious do not seem obvious.
Dennis,
Yes.
you're a security analyst. You have a keen eye on this. If you were to ask Lenku a question today, what would you ask him? Or if you were to ask him also, what would you ask him? Or would you advise him?
Wow, that's a very tricky question, first of all. I mean, because from security, we're used to asking specific questions, coming from, situational happenings. But I think for me, really, it's about tactical knowledge, where even if you're being advised by the police and the military, you have situational awareness of what would happen and what wouldn't happen.
Is it a matter of whether Lenku is a military expert, or is it a matter of the whole entire body and whether it's competent in securing the nation? Because we might just bundle him out of office, but will that change?
I think the thing is this, there's a thin line between what the government wants to say and what it needs to say. The thing is this, there's a lot of secrecy when it comes to security operations. So the thing is this is what the state wants you to know. I mean, in these days that information is demanded and it has to be given. They're just things that the government would not say outrightly. Otherwise, they'll bungle a security operation. But the thing about choosing a better lie, I don't know, that's probably what we need to figure out.
Are these the things then that we shouldn't ask, even if we know?
I think let's get to the point. We don't have an interior minister or an interior cabinet secretary. We don't have a defense cabinet secretary, and we don't have an inspector general of police. What we have are political mouthpieces, because the effective cabinet secretary for all those dockets is the president. He has grabbed all of them for himself and placed in office people who are clueless. As simple as that.
No, but but even more importantly as well, and just back to what the Inspector General was saying, that inciting the public. As media, somebody cannot come and tell us, don't ask or show pictures or run specific stories. Unless in certain cases where you know that story will in fact jeopardize lives of people. If, for example, revealing identities, if you've got undercover investigators, then revealing the identity, then that is a bit different. But being able to say that, look, the terrorists, they're bombing Westgate and 20 people have died, and Kenya has sent its battalion from, was it Gilgil or something? I mean, that is in the public interest, because the public must know what is happening. Now, to whether we have a CS or not, that's an interesting one. The only thing I want to say is that if you remember the late Njenga Karume, he was probably less educated than Olelenku, than Rachel Mamo. But his stature, when he stood to speak to you, when he stood up, and Njenga Karume was a minister for defense. The defense docket was under Njenga Karume. At that time, you could not hear a lot of the things or a lot of the jokes that we make about our cabinet secretaries.
So the problem then, Rahab, isn't really that we are not saying what needs to be said, we're not putting the government on its toes. It's really the appointment and the office. Would you think?
I actually think it's...
Or have you given up?
I actually think it's both. As for me, I think by now he should have actually resigned, because if you actually look at what's happening in Lamu, as in one day there are raids, and then the next day he reassures us. Right. He goes there and reassures us, and then the next night, and then I'm like, what?
And that's why I'm asking. Many times people bring up the issue that they're not qualified. We need someone else in that office. But as we covered, so if we bundle him out by having a campaign that he should resign, how will that expose us as a nation? Or how should we move forward? Because it's not just about getting him out of office. It's about the gaps that we have on the entire national sphere.
I think, Mark, I keep on saying that we need to stop focusing on people as a nation, and it's true. The question about the quality of person in the office cannot go away, but whether you bring in another person or not, I mean, some of these issues that are plaguing Kenya are not new. Let's be real, they're not new to us. And even if you take whoever it is and put them in the office, where are they going to start working from? The thing is this is actually a national issue, and we need to start looking at security from another standpoint, which we haven't looked at. And if you ask me, that's technically what I'd go. Yes. If I can just quickly mention on the issue of Westgate, is that I think the government was trying to establish, which is basically what it is that we call no-go areas for the media. But I think the media has to be left to decide what it is that they should air and what it is that they shouldn't air.
Right. Can I just mention something? I think in the last 2 years, with the things we have seen, this docket is not the same kind of docket that would have been 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we weren't facing the challenges we are facing now, terrorism, the kind of stuff that's actually going on, crime. So now this is a docket which actually needs somebody who actually knows about security. I don't
think so.
Who actually knows about security issues.
I don't think
it helps.
Being a cabinet secretary, you do not have to be an expert in your docket. You don't have to be a doctor to be the cabinet secretary for health,
yes.
or a professor or something to be the cabinet secretary for education. You just have to be a good leader, reasonably intelligent.
But how do we engage?
Reasonably aware of your situation.
Did I mention that the person has to be a PhD? No.
But it sounds a lot like you definitely have no respect or regard, let me say regard, for the people we have in these offices. So as a media practitioner, how do you engage or continue with this conversation when they're in this office? How do you continue having a sober conversation in terms of keeping the government on toes, in terms of, we can't continue talking about resign.
We have written about the kind of blunders we are seeing so much, and I don't think any of us have said Lenku should resign. But anytime something happens, and you can see that he's completely out of his depth, that is a big issue. Right now, as she's saying, we're talking about Mpeketoni. Every single day we are told that the government is in control. What we know is that there are maybe 60 or more armed men walking around freely.
Manuel, should we then, like tonight we had the Deputy President saying that everything will be sorted. Should we then not be airing this when we know the reality on the ground, perhaps that things are not okay?
See, we must air the reality on the ground. And I think what will happen in most developed markets is that they will actually air what the person is saying, and then alongside that put the picture on the ground. But more importantly is that the issue of Olelenku and Omamo and the Inspector General, I don't think it's even a question of them as people. I think it points a major thing to the backbone of how the government is running government business.
All right, let me just break this conversation a bit because we're running out of time. But another pressing issue this week, and perhaps it's something that you would agree all here, that this is also an issue of national security because it is the drinking scourge in Kenya. A 10-year-old boy from Kitengela lies in a coma as we speak after taking contaminated alcohol. Over 20 men have died so far after consuming illicit alcohol in Nandi, and some cases are now emerging out of Nyeri. Now, there was an operation to net some of the illicit brews shops in Eldoret today in an attempt, beg your pardon, to rein in on the scourge of illicit brew continues. A lot of the coverage has been on the shock effect with a look at how many have been killed or are ailing in one way or another. Now, the illicit brew dens are in existence, and it seems attention is given to this national catastrophe when tens are killed.